let's get going. So it is 3:15 on January, where are we? Is it the 12th? We're happy to have you all here today to learn a little bit more about instructional supports for ELL and students with language-based learning disabilities. And next slide. Good, Kelly. Yes, we are thrilled to have you here. I just want to publicly once again acknowledge how hard life has been for mostly everybody, and more so in the area of education. And for all of you that are attending today, I'm amazed when people show up. So thank you for showing up. We really appreciate it. We tried to make the learning as easy as possible for you this year. So, and thanks for all your hard work. It's just a rough year. So, so congrats for joining us. All right, next slide, Kelly. I am Karen Matzo, and right now I am your moderator. I am the Professional Development Director at Demonstrated Success, and I'm so happy to have Kelly Ryder here. Kelly Ryder is a consultant. She runs an organization called the English Learner Portal, and they offer tons of excellent professional development. Virtually, they offer courses, one-offs. Kelly, you can talk more about it. Kelly's also working with us right now in some of the schools that we're working in. She's providing some in-person and virtual support to teachers of English language learners and classroom teachers. So thrilled to have her. She's smart, she's charming and affable, and I have learned a lot from her. So is there anything I didn't include, Kelly?
No, I think that sounds
like
good
you.
To me. Makes me sound good.
Okay. So, and next slide. Just so you all know, today is recorded, right? So as usual, we will record today and we will be posting it on our YouTube site, and you'll also get a link to recording along with a link to a folder that has in it a certificate of completion, and then also some resources that Kelly will be referring to. Hello, Megan. I'm happy to see you. And that's about it. All right. So without too much further ado, I am going to hand things off to Kelly. I'm going to make my face disappear so it's not distracting, and maybe so the screen can be bigger. And Kelly, have at it, and thank you very much in advance.
Thank you. Thank you, Karen. And I second what Karen said about taking the time to be here today when we know how stretched everyone is. So it definitely says a lot about your professionalism and your desire to help students, and that means the world to us, means the world to me. So we have about an hour together, and today we're talking about kind of ESL 101, the beginnings of what every school teacher, leader, assistant, professional associated with schools in any way should know about our English learners, students who are working with language-related disabilities, or just in general, students who may not have a fully developed academic language or have not had the exposure to the world to develop their language as much as possible, which tends to be a barrier sometimes in the classroom. So it's really any student, doesn't need a particular label. Language development in the school is a necessary part for every student. And then we focus a little bit more in particular on those students who we know already have existing barriers or challenges in place. So like Karen, I am going to shut off my video now that you got to see who I am and who's talking to you. I'm going to stop my video because I find it a little distracting to talk to myself, and also to make sure I have full bandwidth going into our presentation today. So under our agenda for today, we have a couple topics we're going to cover. And these would be the topics where we start regardless of who we're working with, wherever I go, whatever state, whatever school. This is where we always start with the foundation of research-based knowledge that we can build upon in the future. So hopefully this won't be the only time that I see you. And as I scroll through, I notice a couple names that I know I will definitely be seeing again. So that makes me happy. So we're going to talk about understanding English proficiency levels. So New Hampshire is a WIDA state that belongs to the WIDA Consortium. And the WIDA Consortium provides your screening assessment, your annual proficiency assessment, and other related tools that we'll talk about as we go through the next hour. With that, it makes it easy for us to understand what the student English proficiency levels mean, because we're all working from the same set of resources. And what's even better about that is there are 38 other states that belong to the WIDA Consortium, and they're all working off the same assessments and outlines and charts and resources. So we can share knowledge across states, especially important right where you're located, where students are kind of hopping around between Massachusetts and Connecticut and and they might go back and forth across the lines. Then some of those scores would still be valid. And we'll get into talking about that. We're going to talk about 3 principles of differentiation. So this is getting into what can we do in the classroom. If you're a school leader, if you're a coach, if you are working with professional learning in any way, what can you be looking for and suggesting to teachers in their teaching of students who are developing language proficiency? And then as the teacher, what can you be doing? What are some simple things that you're probably already doing that you can build upon, and other things that you can focus on integrating to help make your instruction more comprehensible and more accessible to your students? And then we'll just talk a little bit more about other strategies that can help us grow language skills, English proficiency, confidence in speaking and listening and reading and writing, while also having our students learn the content necessary in each of our grade levels. So a lot to talk about in a short amount of time. So let's get in there. When we talk about English proficiency levels, what I mean is if you've heard anyone say, next month in our schools, we're going to be giving the WIDA Access Assessment. Sometimes I hear people say, we need to do the WIDA, it makes me think of a dance. We need to do the WIDA test, we need to do the proficiency test, we need to do access testing, whatever they call it. It happens every year. January, February, I think you guys go a little bit into the beginning of March. And then your scores come back after, like right at the end or after the end of the school year. And we know what your students' English proficiency levels are. And you might hear teachers say, or your ESL teachers say, oh, he's a 3, she's a 4. This student is brand new, they're just a 1. So tonight we're going to talk about what on earth does that mean? What does that mean for me in the classroom? What does that mean for my expectations? What should I be doing with this student? All of those things are part of today. So when I think about the curriculum that's being taught every day, when we think about all the pieces of your lesson plans, everything that's in that curriculum guide or in those online resources, I think about it as this big layer cake like you see on the screen. And our students who come to school most prepared with full English proficiency, with supports at home, with lots of exposure to the world, they are ready to eat that whole layer cake and the little kiwi pineapple cherry on top. They are ready for all of it, and you can fully expect that they can consume all of it, right? In this case, for the curriculum, it would be good for them. When it comes to the cake, maybe not so much. But when we're thinking about English learners or students who are developing their language skills, we want to look at our layer cake a little differently. So if this is our whole lesson, or our whole math curriculum, our whole language arts curriculum, whatever it may be, our fully proficient students with no language disabilities or anything like that can consume that whole cake. Realistically, our English learners, our students with beginning English proficiency, we want them to be exposed to the whole cake. We want them to participate in all things wonderful in 3rd grade or 5th grade or 7th grade science, whatever it is. We want to expose them to the whole cake. But we can't force feed the whole cake into them if they're not that hungry, if they're not ready for it. I guess hungry is kind of a bad analogy there, because our students are very hungry for knowledge. It's just like the capacity. So when you think about this layer cake, you think of students who are beginning English speakers. They're usually level 1, level 2, if you hear levels being tossed around. Level 1, level 2, beginning English speakers. These are your brand new pre-K or kindergartners. These are your students who just moved to the United States, or they might be first, second generation. They might have parents who went to school, but they've been home with their parents who speak other languages, and this is their first exposure to English. For whatever reason, they're beginning their English journey. So if they're level 1, level 2, those are students who have a few words. They can maybe make some simple sentences. They can understand pretty basic commands and, get their needs across in a cryptic kind of way at times. Those students can realistically consume a little bit, a couple layers of that big layer cake. So we have to talk about this with a word of caution, is that I'm not lowering my expectations. I'm not saying that your level 1 and 2 English learners can't learn the curriculum. They absolutely can, and we need to expose them to it. What I'm saying is that if we want to be realistic, we need to accept the fact that they're not going to get everything, because the amount of processing it would take to get through everything you're presenting each day and all of the activities they're working on each day with this level of English proficiency would be way more than can happen in the time that we have. It could happen, but it's not going to happen in the amount of time we have each day, because it would be a huge, huge undertaking. So what do? Right, so the first thing I'm suggesting to you is to really look at your curriculum. And I'm not saying excuse students from anything. I want to keep repeating that, right? We're not saying we have low expectations. We have realistic expectations. And if I know my level 1 and 2 students are realistically going to get or comprehend like 2 layers of my 6-layer cake, 25, 30, 35% of what we do, then I need to make sure as the teacher that I am carefully choosing what those 2 layers are. So do I want to spend my time finding pictures and developing resources and really differentiating and scaffolding and doing all the magic tricks possible for pieces of my curriculum that just aren't as important? So first thing is prioritizing. What are the key pieces that students must get? And we can't say everything because, again, we're talking reality. What must they get? What do they need for the next unit? What do they absolutely need to be able to progress to the next grade? What is most important? Once we decide that, that's where we're going to put our energy in supporting and differentiating that we'll talk about in this hour. The other things are bonus. And if they get more than the 30%, that's amazing, because good teachers can make that happen. And you usually do it without you even knowing it. So they will pick up a lot more without you putting in hours and hours and hours of planning. So focus that planning time. What is most important? And that's where I'm putting the most energy. And everything else that happens is magical and wonderful. And I'm going to take it and we're going to set up the situation so they can get as much as possible. Our students are very resourceful and they know to look around them. They know to go to their background knowledge. They know to ask friends. So there's a lot of things happening in the room. We're going to prioritize your time into those big rocks, those really important pieces of the curriculum. So I hope that gives you a little space to breathe and say, okay, we can be realistic. They don't need to write a 5-page essay as a level 2 student. I need them to meet the standard, which says they need to state a claim and use evidence. I can do that in a paragraph. I can do that with pictures. I can do that with a graphic organizer. So kind of letting go of the ideas in your mind of what it must be, and then thinking about what is realistic. So how do we know what's realistic then? Right? Our students are all over the place in their English. We have brand new students. We have students who have been here a week, a month, 6 months, a year, 5 years since they walked in the door, kindergarten 9 years ago. They're all over the place. So the first thing I ask you to do is to take some time and explore a little data. So for your students, for your English learners, look up or talk to your ESL person, however it's easiest for you to get in touch with the proficiency data, and ask to see those scores. You'll see an overall score, which is not exactly an average, but close, kind of. The percentages are a little off than an exact average, but it's ballpark. And then there's a score for listening, a score for reading, a score for writing, and a score for speaking. So you'll see 5 different scores and some other combinations and composites, but those 5 are what I want you to look for, because they're going to give you a lot of information about how much you need to be accommodating and differentiating. So one of the documents that Karen will be sending to you it's actually 2 different documents, the WIDA performance definitions, which is, I have an example of it here on the screen. Now, this version is the listening and reading page. There's another page that are the performance definitions for speaking and writing. And so the difference there is listening and reading. Those are the receptive language skills. So we measure that a little differently than speaking and writing, which are expressive language skills. But both charts look pretty identical. Just the wording is a little different. The descriptors are a little different. And it's worth looking at both when you get those files. But for right now, we're just looking at listening and reading. So I don't want to say too much about it up front, because I want to do an activity with you for you to explore it a little. And I know it's a little fuzzy on the screen, but I hope it's clear enough that you can get the gist from it. So as I said, level 1 are the beginners. I don't like to say low level because that sounds negative, but 1 is the lowest level, the most beginning proficiency level. And then we have levels 2, 3, 4, 5, and level 6 is what's considered close to English proficient or similar to a native English speaking peer. So of course, our goal for all of our students is 6, but it takes time to get there. We have students who are starting all over the place in there. We consider level 1 and 2 to be our beginners. They need the most support and differentiation. Our level 3s getting into the lower level 4s, those are our intermediates. They function pretty well in the classroom. They can fool you into thinking they know exactly what's going on all the time, but they generally tend to get hung up when it comes to some of the literacy tasks or higher levels of literacy, and they still need differentiation and supports. They just need a little different than our beginners. And that 4.5 and above, those are our advanced students. They will have holes, kind of like a Swiss cheese language experience, where they need supports, but it's here and there. And they can usually tell you where those holes are, and you can help fill them in piece by piece. But they are heading pretty well towards proficiency. So that gives a big picture of where we're going with it. So let's do a little activity to explore this a little more. If you have a piece of scrap paper, that's fine. If you want to use the chat box, that's fine also. We're going to do an activity called I See, I Think, I Wonder. And this isn't new, but it's always great to bring back because we get this from the Visible Thinking website. And the Visible Thinking website has tons of ways to make our content more concrete, more visual, which is great for students who need supports in language for whatever reason. And it's great for just our students who are more visual learners and less auditory, which could be very English proficient students as well. So I see, I think, I wonder is our strategy. There's a million different ways you can do this. If I'm in a classroom with students, I often will put up, if I'm teacher in front of the room with the class, I'll put up chart paper, make those 3 categories, and I'll record what students say. If they're a little bit more independent, if they're of the age and the proficiency level where they can do the writing, I'll put up chart paper in small groups and they make their own charts. When students are online, we do a lot of I See, I Think, I Wonder using Padlet and the little stickies with Padlet. I'm sure there are a ton of other technology ways. But for tonight, we're doing this individually. And when we introduce I See, I Think, I Wonder, we start slowly and with a timer. Love using a timer. So the directions are, in a minute, when I finish the directions, I'm going to show you that performance definition chart again, so you can see the resource. For 2 minutes, either on your paper in front of you, in your notes, or in the chat box, wherever you feel most comfortable, I want you to write what you see. It's that simple. I see columns. I see rows. I see, you just go crazy, brainstorm everything you see for 2 minutes. Then we're going to stop and we're going to move to I think, and then we'll stop and we'll move to I wonder. So try to hang with me in the timing. Again, use paper in front of you or use the chat box. It would be great to see some of your answers. I'll put the resource back on the screen for you. And okay, ready? Got your pen ready or your fingers ready on the keyboard? And 2 minutes in the chat box or on your paper, look at this performance definition and start with I See. And I like how Catherine jumped in with the screen before and said she found a website she wants to visit. So absolutely. All right, we have performance definitions. I see. All right, everybody go, 2 minutes.
I can't see it, it's too small.
Hey, Kelly,
Yes,
is there a way to make it bigger
let me see.
or to go into the actual document in a PDF or something?
Okay, let's see if I can.
Thanks for whoever just mentioned that.
I can find it in my files here. Zoom has so many windows open. You got to move them all over the place to get in there. Okay.
I'm just, Utara just wrote in. She says, I use a lot of thinking routines from Project Zero. Yeah.
It is. Project Zero is amazing.
Project Zero is the best. I'm thrilled to hear that so many of you know about them because we did a workshop a webinar session from them twice now.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, I know. They are great.
Okay, I think this might be a little more clear. We cut off the bottom, but level one's down there at the bottom. All right, so let's start our 2 minutes. I see. What do you see there?
I'm not sure where we are viewing this.
Say it again.
I'm not sure what we are viewing right now. Where is it located?
Utara, is that you?
Yes,
Hi. Where is it located?
I don't see it in the chat.
It should be in your Zoom window.
My Zoom window. It's
So
not.
Utara, are you seeing the visuals?
Am I seeing it says within socio-cultural context for processing language? That's what I'm seeing. Am I frozen?
Oh, then there's the chart is under that phrase. The visual.
Oh, the discourse dimension, linguistic complexity, that one?
That's it. You got it.
Okay, sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Okay, thanks for asking.
Always technical issues when you get online.
Which means always technical issues.
Yeah, right.
Because
Since
we're
we're
always online.
online. All right. If you are still recording what you see, please feel free to go ahead. But for the sake of our hour, I'm going to switch us to I think. So looking at this chart, looking at the WIDA performance definitions, what does it make you think? So start your sentences with I think, and let's see, one I hear often in workshops or different presentations is, I think the expectations are pretty high, right? What do you think? I think, either on your paper or in the chat. Okay, is there anyone who wants to unmute and share some of the things they think? I think, what are you thinking?
I will.
Go ahead.
Only from trying to fit kids into categories in the past, I think that some of these expectations might be a little hard to put kids into because they seem very cut and dry. I mean, black and white, I find that it might be some subjectiveness with some of the students.
Right. It's always hard to put students into a little box and categorize them. So the initial scores come from the access assessment. And again, assessments are one snapshot in time. They have their share of biases and advantages and disadvantages for different students. So you're right, but it is difficult, but at least it gives us a ballpark for now. If you have students who aren't English learners or who are proficient enough that they're no longer being assessed, or you have students who are learning language and are in your mind when it comes to language for other reasons, they're not going to have a score, but you can kind of ballpark about where on the chart you would find them. Or And they really could be in one place for one area and a total different level for another. Exactly as Julie said in the chat box, relating to their background knowledge really makes a difference in how they score as well. So all those things are absolutely legitimate. All right, let's take a couple minutes and now think of I wonder. And for this one, if you could put it in the chat box, that would be great, because this generates questions that we can definitely answer for you. So I wonder, what do you wonder about these performance definitions?
Christine.
In the chat.
Yes,
Kelly,
if you could put it in the chat, that would be great. Or if you want to unmute your mic and share out loud, if your hands are full, you certainly may.
so let's see. Julie was saying, I see expectations. I think how long it will take a student to reach level 6? Question mark.
Absolutely.
Yeah, right. Julie was saying, I think relating ideas to their background knowledge is valuable. Utara was saying, I think classroom teachers need to explicitly teach grammar. And Sophia was saying that I wonder how to differentiate the different levels. And some of these look and what some of them look and sound like. Those are such good questions.
Oh, nice.
Heidi's saying, I wonder if there was a common assessment to evaluate these categories for each student.
Right, great observations and questions. So just in general, our student scores for this, I wonder how tired the newcomers are. I know, can you imagine?
Truly.
It's exhausting. I mean, think about how you feel sitting in a staff meeting where it sounds like blah, blah, blah. And,
Right.
you know, I think about when I coached a calculus teacher and I sat in his class and I was like, I tuned out. Sorry, I didn't understand anything you were saying. So we all get it.
Yeah, the Peanuts cartoons.
Exactly, right. That's what it must sound like all day. And then they really want to make you happy because you're such a nice teacher. So for the students who are officially in the English ESL program, they take the WIDA Access Assessment, and that's where their scores come from. Other students, we just have to know, about where and ballpark it. And we can look at writing samples. You can listen into student conversations and kind of gauge their speaking to get benchmarks in between the assessments. But this really can help us with our differentiation. And that's how, where I'm going to take you over the next couple minutes is then the so what. So what? Once we know their scores, we know what their scores mean, we kind of know what they're doing. Then, so what do we do with that? And that's where we are headed. So let me.
Kelly, while you're switching, can I ask you to address possibly just a couple of things from the chat? Heidi was wondering how often we assess these levels. And Leanne, and before you answer that, I just wanted to speak to Leanne's point. Leanne was wondering if teachers have access to ELL differentiation ideas in their programs and how connected they are with ESOL teachers to get help. And so, Leanne, I can speak to that a little bit. The teachers that I've worked with, they are so, especially right now, folks are so overwhelmed that if the structure isn't there, the regular structure for the collaboration is not there, I don't see that differentiation happening. And I do feel like the more ELL instructors can collaborate and coach and serve classrooms that way, I think it's more effective. It's just,
Right, absolutely.
And then just one more thing, Kelly, in terms of assessing the levels, do you have anything to? I don't know the answer to that. Do you? I mean, how often how often are you assessing and moving kids up in levels?
Well, officially, they get their annual assessment once a year. That makes sense since it's annual. And those are their official scores that are put in the student records, that go to the state, that go to the federal government. But in between those years, from February to February, if we're really going to differentiate, then we need to do some progress monitoring and formative assessment. And that's actually one of the goals that we have at one of the schools I'm working with there with you guys, is to come up with some ways to monitor that. So within the WIDA materials, there are rubrics for speaking and writing. There are can-do descriptors, which Karen is putting into the materials that she's going to share with you after. And those resources give you even more information about what those levels mean and look like and sound like, because that was a great comment, that it would be great to see what it sounds like and looks like. They have lots of descriptors. The WIDA website has writing samples and things like that that you can look at. But I would say it would be great in my dream world if at least quarterly. It doesn't have to be a time-consuming big assessment. Like, I don't want to stop instruction. We already have so little happening with all the other interruptions. But to look at those rubrics and think, you know, I asked students to write a response to this. Let me just, you know, compare it to the rubric and get a quick formative assessment. Where are they? With the word and phrase dimension, where are they with their vocabulary? Are they using the vocabulary we taught? Are they using real science words? Are they staying pretty simple and generic? How can I help them with that? When you look down the middle of the chart and we look at the sentence dimension, there we're looking for a variety of sentences. We're looking for commas, we're looking for connectors, we're looking for conjunctions, we're looking for transitions. Like, in addition to later that day, on another note, you know, all those things that make our writing more sophisticated. So you can take a look at a writing sample from the sentence level. And are they writing really simple, short, repetitive sentences? How can we get them to change that up some? And then in the green column, the discourse dimension, when it comes to writing, it's more of the organization, the flow, the sequencing, the length, the complexity. You know, do they really carry a message? In speaking, it's, can they hold the floor for a little longer? Can they talk at length on a topic? Do they give one-word answers? Do they give me a sentence? Do they give me like a whole explanation? So I think if, like, once a quarter or so, you can do a quick check of a writing sample, or you can ask students, like even in small group or in whole class, to answer a question orally, and then you can jot down some notes about their vocabulary and their sentences and their fluency. It would be great to kind of spot check on a regular basis. I know there's so many other things going on, so I would do it with work you're already planning on doing and not stop the world and do a writing and a speaking assessment, if that makes sense to you. And just kind of keep monitoring, keep comparing their work, their responses to those WIDA resources, and see what are they already doing and where can I take them next? Where can I model something that would be the next level up for them? So I hope that helps. I know that's a lot of wishing in a time when we could barely get our kids in the door. So feel free to continue to put questions in the chat. And Karen, thank you for keeping track of that, because it flies by so fast that monitoring it gets away from me. So feel free to keep adding there. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the differentiation part. And before we even get to differentiation, we just have to have students have access to your teaching. Like, can they understand what you're trying to explain? When you are up in front of the room or you're sitting in front of a small group, do they have a chance of understanding? Because as one of you said in the chat, it's exhausting, you know, day after day when they're only understanding a fraction of what's going on. How can we help them understand more without teachers spending hours and hours and hours planning? So that's always our balance. What can we do to help them understand more without running ourselves ragged? And so I want to share this video with you. This is Mrs. Amin, and she's going to do a lesson for you. I want you to listen to her lesson and think about what's some of the key vocabulary that you think she had probably taught the class that she's checking to see if they know. And then what's the big idea of her lesson? So again, if we wanted our level 1 and 2 to just get the big idea, would they get the big idea from this lesson? I love that the video came up. That makes me happy.
غیر از خدا هیچ کس نبود. توی شهر دور یک پنگوئن بود و یک اردک. پنگوئن فقط دوست داشت کلا بخوره. غذاشم فقط شکلات بود و آب نبات و چیپس. همیشه سرش درد میکرد، همیشه دلش درد میکرد. توی مدرسه هم هیچ شاگرد خوبی نبود و درس نمیتونست بخونه. در عوض اردک فقط آب پرتقال میخورد، سیب دوست داشت بخوره، گلابی میخورد، گندم میخورد و نون رو دوست داشت بخوره. خیلی ورزش میکرد، میدونی حالش خوب بود. توی مدرسه هم خیلی شاگرد خوبی بود.
Okay, so either in your microphone or in the chat, what was some key vocabulary? What was the big idea? What did you understand? Did you get one layer of the cake, 2 layers of the cake, the whole cake?
A mishmash of sounds.
Okay, you heard, you could recognize sounds. 0 cake, no cake for you today. All right, thank you for jumping in. Now, Mrs. Amin got that feedback from her school administrator, of totally making it up, that her students were really understanding nothing, and could she do just a little bit? But you are, Catherine, you are absolutely right. Now that would be exhausting day after day if that's what you understood going on in the classroom. So we're going to watch Mrs. Amin try to upgrade her lesson a bit and see if you can answer that a little better.
Now I'm going to present to you the same lesson in a different manner. یکی بود یکی نبود. غیر از خدا هیچ کس نبود. تو یک شهر دور یک پنگوئن بود و یک اردک. پنگوئن فقط دوست داشت کلا بخوره. غذاش هم فقط شکلات بود و آب نبات و چیپس. پنگوئن همیشه خسته بود. سرش درد میکرد، دلش درد میکرد. توی مدرسه هم هیچ شاگرد خوبی نبود. وقتی که میشست مدادش رو دست میگرفت، ولی بعد از 2 دقیقه دهن دره میکرد. میگفت سرم درد میکنه. سرش رو میگذاشت روی کتاب و میگفت بهتره چرت بزنم. در عوض اردک همیشه آب پرتقال میخورد. سیب رو خیلی دوست داشت بخوره. گلابی میخورد. نون خوب میخورد گندم میخورد همیشه حالش خوب بود ورزش میکرد میدوید هیچ وقتم مریض نمیشد توی مدرسه هم شاگرد خیلی خوبی بود مدادش رو دست میگرفت تند و تند درسش رو میخوند و مینوشت همیشه توی مدرسه نمره های خیلی خوب داشت شاگردام همیشه براش دست میزدن
Okay, again, the whole lesson was not in English, but Mrs. Amin upgraded her strategies a little bit. So in the chat, what did she do? What did she add that made a difference? Oh, and before we talk about what she added, how much of the cake did you get this time? Did you get the big idea? Did you get the big rocks? Did you get a few words? Did you get more than the first time? Okay, there were a few words that kept repeating. So in time, you would start to recognize those. All right, now people are feeling like they got the big idea. What foods are healthy and unhealthy? Exactly. So if that's what you were thinking, you were understanding correctly. Right, so go ahead and add in the chat, what are some strategies Mrs. Amin used to make her lesson more comprehensible? What did she do to make a difference for you? Right, she used gestures. Visuals. See, little things that take no preparation. She paused. She emphasized certain words using gestures and her voice, right? Her facial expressions, all of these things don't take a lot of planning time. She spoke more slowly, right? The second lesson took about twice as long as the first lesson with the same words. If you noticed, she moved from one side of the table to the other. That kind of gives the impression of, it's like a visual Venn diagram. You can tell she's comparing because she looked on this side, then she looked on that side. It's those like little subliminal messages that the students really do pick up on that don't take a lot of planning time on your part. Now, gathering visuals does take a little bit of time. In no way do you need to have a whole spread on the table in front of you and as many visuals as she had, but you do see the power of what a few visuals can do in your lesson. So something to consider. And again, we're going to go back and think about that, that layer cake. And if we're going to support certain concepts, certain big rocks, where do we provide the visuals and where do we, have to let it go for time's sake or for our sanity? So what are the most important words? What are the most important concepts? That's where we'll dig into our visuals and our strategies. And then whatever else we can do beyond that is bonus, but we're really focusing on those big rocks first. All right, so the three principles of differentiation, the three principles of language, of lesson planning, are just three reminders of things you can do, like Mrs. Amin, to make your lessons more comprehensible without a lot of hoopla. A good place to get started. I would guarantee you're already doing some of it. And then, so what we ask for is if you say, oh, I already do that. Excellent. First thing is good for you and thank you so much if you're saying I already do that. My challenge to you then is to say, how can we do these things a little bit more intentionally? And then how can we think about the students' language levels and how we can bump them up a little with some of these strategies? If you're not doing it yet, then I would love to just challenge you to say, how can I start putting a little bit of this in each lesson until I build up my confidence and I build up my bank of strategies? So scaffolds and supports. If you have paper in front of you, in our workshops, we often like to use foldables. There's a whole world of foldables out there, if you Google it, of how you can take plain paper and fold it into different kinds of organizers for students to take notes or record their thoughts or think things through. The foldables, because the students are making it themselves, they are folding the paper, they are doing the labeling, it's hands-on. It just makes work a little bit more engaging, and it makes it a little more fun, and it makes it a little more their own. They own it a little more. So if you want to make your foldable, you just take a sheet of paper, turn it landscape, fold it in half and just crease the top half, and you get that line at the top there between interaction and comprehensibility. Right, then you open it back up and fold the one corner over and get that crease to the right. Open that back up, fold the interaction corner down toward the bottom, fold that crease. Of course, if I was with students, I would be modeling this for them with the paper and doing it with them. We have a couple different courses in our selection of 5-hour courses on foldables. It's like simplest graduate credit you can ever earn and great ideas. But if you're not feeling like doing the foldable, just jot down interaction, comprehensibility, and critical thinking. You're adults, you can take notes your way. This is how we would do with students. So we're going to start with interaction. If I had one tip, the closest thing to a magic wand, the closest thing to the silver bullet that I could suggest to all teachers of what they can do to help students with language concerns, language delays, lower English proficiency, beginning English proficiency, anybody who's dealing with language growth, and anyone who's new to the concepts you're teaching, because it's not just language, but concept development as well, is building in more interaction. So I would bet that most of you, all of you probably, are already doing some kind of think, pair, share, turn and talk, right? Those are great interaction strategies. So the upgrade, which I ask you to consider, is how can you structure it a little more? Like maybe you'll say, when you turn and talk to your partner, I want to hear these fraction words that we've been using in class, and maybe have a word wall here they can refer to. I want you to use your new vocabulary when you're talking to your partner, or give them a sentence stem or a sentence frame that's a little bit higher to kind of push them up a little. When you turn and talk to your partner, I should hear things like, I know that blank is greater than blank because, or I know that blank is the numerator because it is on the, and then give them some prompts to up their conversation. The second part of interaction, which we don't see as much, is that discourse, is students having time for extended conversation and problem solving. It's not that our teachers don't want to or don't know, it really comes down to a matter of time and classroom management. So we know when we set students off to work collaboratively or give them extended time to discuss, they can get a little off track at times, just sometimes. And so we really, have to think about how to structure it to keep them on track. And if there's something we have to cut from a lesson because we're running short on time, we often cut the group work or the discussion. So I just challenge you to think about that and think about the bang for your buck. If you prioritize giving students time for that interaction and you structure it a little bit to give them some support, you will find that you have to repeat yourself a lot less because they will be clarifying for each other. They will be teaching each other. They will be redirecting each other. And it takes practice. It takes routines. But that time, I promise you, is going to be super valuable and worth it. And again, as Karen mentioned, we offer tons and tons of short courses you can take for professional development. And we have a number that focus on interaction strategies to get real specific of here are some things you can do to get students talking and how to structure it. We won't get into all that right now, but it's definitely there for you. Number one, if you do anything tomorrow, build in as more interaction. Oral language, that development of oral language is so crucial because that's when students clarify the concepts, they find out what they're confused about, they get answers, they practice those words on their tongue, they get to find out if people understand them or not, and they are validated in being smart. There's also a ton of research around the fact that oral language is the basis for literacy. So the higher level of oral language your students have, the more access they have to reading and writing. And if you have students talk about what they're going to write first, you'll see a difference in their writing. So just keep that in mind. Oral language first, then we'll write about it. Talk about it, then write about it. You'll see a huge difference. Some things you can do to get students talking. I love this book. It's not one of the newest out there, but again, you know, a good strategy is a good strategy, and they keep updating it with videos and all kinds of things. So highly recommend this, but talk moves, simple things you can do to get your students talking more. Prompts from you. If you say, hey, so you're saying that that's the numerator because it's on top. Did I have that right? So not only are students hearing you model, they're hearing clarification of the concept, and you're validating the student's response. So perfect. Another interaction strategy. Can you restate or rephrase what I just said? Can you say it in your words? You know, Johnny, can you explain the numerator a little differently than I did? Or can Maria, can you explain what Johnny just said? That kind of repeating, repetition is amazing. Do you agree or disagree? Like getting students to think critically. Teaching them how to agree and disagree politely is very important at the beginning of the school year. Great language lessons. Adding on. Could you say more about that? Could someone add to Karen's example? What else could we include here? How else could we describe this idea? Wait time. We talked about how much processing our students are doing. They're going in their brain, they're looking for information, especially if they have a disability in language processing. Huge wait time is huge. But even if there's no disability or concern, it's just going back and forth between 2 or 3 different languages takes time and energy. So giving students ample wait time from the time that we ask the question, let them think for a minute to develop their answers, and then to call on them and let them think for a minute and give us their answers. And then again, we talked about the value of turning, talk, think, pair, share. So I just want to pause for a quick second. We have a little bit more to go as we got into our questions and conversation earlier. So I want to honor those people who committed till 4:15. And if you need to run, Karen is recording and you'll get that link. But if you are able to hang in there, we'll go, about 5 more minutes and we can get through our next pieces. All right, so then comprehensibility. Talked about getting that interaction in. How can we up the comprehensibility? Mrs. Amin is a perfect example of this. So think of her when you think of comprehensibility. It's exactly what you all said. Visuals, providing manipulative, gestures, organizers, multimedia, using video, acting something out. What can you do to help make that message clear? So think about your comprehensibility as you're planning. And then as you're doing that, we talked about the differentiation. We know what the levels mean. We have to do a little more study into that, a little more review, but you have the gist of it. You know what those proficiency levels mean. Well, in linguistics and language development, we really work on this comprehensible input, or I+1. Our students grow when we challenge them a little bit beyond where they are comfortably. You've learned that with guided reading. They have their independent level, and then we go a little higher for their instructional level. So when we create a model text, or we create a sentence starter, or we model what we want students to do, just think about the language level. And if most of your students are beginners, then model something a little bit higher. If most of your students are intermediate, make sure that your models are pushing them a little higher. Like, get a little more academic, push those limits, and let them see higher level models. Our last part is that critical thinking, and that goes again with, don't be afraid to model a little higher and to set them up and say, when you talk to each other, I want to hear it like this, because they can do it if we support them in it. Also, with critical thinking, we really want to think about what the standard is asking. We don't want to water down the standard. If the standard says they can compare fractions, then they can compare fractions. But we might need to assess it a little differently. Maybe they're pointing. Maybe they're speaking the answer. Maybe they're modeling it with a manipulative. Or maybe they're writing a paragraph about how they know that their answer is correct. So consider those proficiency levels when you are doing those informal assessments. I know you don't have control over the big ones, that come from the district, come from the state, but on your day-to-day expectations, think about how you can take the proficiency level into account. Looking at those can-do descriptors that Karen's going to send you will give you ideas. It gives you examples of what students can do when they're level 1, level 2, level 3, and that'll be helpful too. All right, so somehow with speed talking, we got through all of the things we wanted to cover tonight. So I know I'm going to turn it back over to Karen in a second, but I wanted to thank you and invite you at any time to visit English Learner Portal. Check out, we have a lot of self-paced online professional development that we've developed over the past year and a half because of need, because we had to stop going out and seeing folks. So lots of things that you can do on your own independently, lots of things that you can do at your own pace for all of these topics that we've talked about today. And again, if you have questions, feel free to contact. Here is the, Karen, do you want to tell them about how to get all those handouts, certificate, all that good stuff?
Well, yeah, you don't have to do anything. So there.
Easy to do.
There is going to be, you'll get an email, and that's good. I would also suggest that the info phone number there, the 262, that's obsolete. And you certainly should reach out to me if you need anything. You can feel free. I had originally put Kelly's info there, but you can also reach out to Adriana because she also works with Kelly and with me. If you need anything at all, and you will be getting a link with handouts and all sorts of goodies. There's a survey that should come up for you at the end of this presentation. If you wouldn't mind taking probably a minute and a half to complete that, that would be fabulous, because we always appreciate your feedback. All right. And thanks, Jean. Jean's recommending English Portal. Yeah, I agree. So thank you all so much. And I just want to, for those of you that are still here, the Wendy Perrin, who works for the state, she's the head of English language learning for the state of New Hampshire. She and I in March are going to be doing a joint session focused on looking at your access data. So hopefully you'll find out all about that. Okay. All right, all. Thank you, Kelly. She put her
my email in the chat box there. Since
awesome.
I forgot to update it on the slide, but thank you again, everybody. It was nice seeing some familiar faces and new faces, and I hope we can talk again soon.
Yeah, go forth, be happy. Bye. Hello, Kelly. How are you? You still here?
I am.
Oh,
Hello.
that was so great. So great. Thank you. So happy.
Speed talking.
What?
The speed talking in webinars, but it's good. You have
Yeah.
to, they feel like you got as much in an hour. So hopefully it made sense to them. They seem to connect in the few that were participating.
No, I think that was good participation, actually. You're a good
Yeah,
waiter, too.
yeah.
You're a good wait them out person. And also look at the chat. There's so much in the chat. So that's really
Yeah,
good.
I know I missed some of it. I'll have to go back and look because it kept flying by faster than I could see it and think about what I was saying at the same time. So thanks for jumping in and reading some of those.
That's my job.
Yeah.
All
All
right.
right. So tomorrow morning I have the Manchester folks. Friday morning I have the Ledge folks. So it'll be fun online. I think it took some pressure off people.
I think so. Maybe it's nice for you too, just for a little bit, to not have to go anywhere.
Yeah, it's really cold up there.
Oh, yeah. Where are you now? Are you in Maryland?
Virginia, right?
You're in
now.
Virginia. Okay. But then you have somewhere else that you
Virginia.
live, don't you?
South Carolina.
Okay. And where in
Yeah,
South
my
Carolina?
boyfriend lives in Virginia and
Yeah.
I live in South Carolina, so we go back and forth.
Awesome.
But
Awesome.
I'm in Virginia right now, and it's cold, but it's not New Hampshire cold.
Oh, not
I looked last night and I was like, if I was leaving for New Hampshire, I would be packing for -3 degrees, and that's with no wind.
no,
Looking on my app, and I was like, no.
no, not fun. I'm just mad we used to have that flight to Myrtle Beach that I was telling you about originally, and doesn't exist
Mhm.
anymore. I'm so bummed. I'm ready to
Oh,
go.
that is, yeah, because you could just come on down and hang out.
Yeah. Someday.
Maybe they'll bring it back.
All right. Well, I'll talk to you then. Yeah.
A lot of the flights they just run in the summer.
Right.
You know, they'll go.
Well, that's what when I went to go do it, it like started in like May. Like, I don't need to go to
Right.
Myrtle Beach in May. I want to go now.
Yeah, they cut it back a lot because it's such a tiny airport. They just cut it back the rest of the year. But yeah. All right. Well, I will let you know how the next couple days go. If you get any questions or feedback, let me know.
I will. Okay. Thanks, Kelly. Be well.
Good to see you again.
You
You
too.
too.
See ya.